Guys, can someone tell me if they are seeing me here or not? Because I've been talking for about 15 minutes here, and I don't know if you guys have seen any of this yet, but I see the chat's going crazy. So can someone let me know if you now hear and see me in the chats? Okay, all right. Well, I have just been over here talking to myself. Okay, I thought that we had started, so I guess I got a good practice round before you guys saw me. I started the stream, and I guess it didn't actually start. So okay, well, I got a good practice round in here then, you guys. So, thank you guys for tuning in. I'll apologize now that it's 16 minutes late, but I really was over here talking to myself and apparently just to myself. So, I want to start off and thank some people really quickly, you guys, because I typically when I start the lives, I get nervous or I get too kind of enthralled in what I'm talking about, and then I forget to thank people. So I want to thank Pastor Ray at the unction. I am going to use one of a clips from one of his broadcasts recently, and Everett, of course, at Ohio for Freedom, Marianne at Truth Be Told, Mr. Who, Pete and Barry from the Trinity Foundation. I'm actually using one of the clips that Pete sent me. I'd like to thank Carol West, Terrence, Michelle and Jeff Van Hoos, and then just countless of other people that I know tune in and are praying and uh, just are faithful and are also survivors of World Harvest Church. So thank you guys for bearing with me. I was having apparently a technical difficulty with my stream and it wasn't happening. So I'm going to start the podcast tonight with the teaser audio that I released yesterday. Now, I'm going to try to preface as much as possible and let you know when a lot of these recordings happen, if I'm aware of it. So, the recording that you all likely heard yesterday when I released it is a conversation that Ashton was having with Carol, and it was being recorded secretly, of course. And um, they are having it feels like they're having a pretty genuine conversation about, and Ashton's talking about feeling like, there's double lives and there's lies and covering things up, and that she has to put her family and the church and the reputation ahead of her own self and her own well-being. And I'll have to admit, when I listen to this again, it's hard not to have some compassion for Ashton when you hear this, because you can imagine probably growing up the way that she has grown up. And it's almost like, did she ever really have a chance to kind of be normal? But she is an adult now. She's 35 years old, and she does need to take some responsibility for her actions and decide how she wants her life to go. And this audio was taken in 2020, and again, it's hard to listen to it and to not have some compassion. But then when you know the things that she said and done since then, it's likely harder to have as much compassion. But I will also say that when you're dealing with master manipulators, you're dealing with liars, narcissistic personalities, that you learn really quickly that they can basically turn into whoever they need to be in that moment to kind of win you back, get you on their side, get you to feel sorry for them, or at least try to get you to understand their point of view, even though a lot of, they're wrong. But when you are dealing with people and what they're saying verbally and what they're actually doing don't line up, you have to go by the actions. And I know way too much that's happened since this conversation for me to have as much compassion as I just honestly have when I hear the audio. So I'm getting ready to play the audio again. I know probably most of you have heard it, but I'm going to play it again, and I would like for you in the chat. And when I said this the first time, y'all, I'm like, y'all ain't even telling me what y'all think of this video. And it was because y'all couldn't hear it. Y'all couldn't see me. So I'm going to play this again, and if you could give your thoughts in the chat, what you think of the audio, and we'll kind of unpack that a little bit before we go on to the next audio. But again, this audio was taken secretly in 2020. And there are going to be a few clips that I'm playing tonight from that. So here we go, you guys.
Like, I live in this state of hypervigilance where I'm always afraid something's going to get out, and the ramifications of that and what that means for me, my family. And I'm not sitting here trying to play some fiddle like woe is me, but at the same time, just where I can identify with some of the things that, like, you go through, you don't know what it's like to have your face splattered across the news for, voter fraud. Like, you don't know what it's like to have people know that you're being investigated by children's services. It's like, you don't know what it's like to have a stalker for 3 years. And all of those things are as a result of or connected back to that place, the church, my family. And so I always, I go into this mode of, protect at all costs. And it doesn't matter who you have to lie to. There's always, there's always a party line. There's always got to be a strategy. And my life has always been this impossible game of, chess and Tetris, and trying to figure out who fits where, what fits where, who can I tell what. And a lot of it too is it is insecurity, fear of being judged, looked at differently, seen as less than, and that fear of the blurred line where it's like, if I tell them this, they'll no longer respect me as, any type of spiritual authority, or they'll no longer respect my position at the church. And my instinct is to always protect that first instead of protect Ashton. And it's a really tough, it's a really tough line to toe, because I've never felt like my life is mine. I've never felt like I have room to make mistakes. That's why there's so many lies and hiding and double life and all of that, because I've never had room to make mistakes, and when I do, it's immediately, it's not how can we help our daughter, it's how can we interpret this, mm-hmm. and smooth this over, and how do we cover it up, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I see that you guys are saying, your thoughts in the chat, and I think that basically the consensus is, there is some people feel some empathy for her. I think that a lot of people do not, because now that this is from 2020, it's not recently. And a lot of the things that she's done since then would indicate to me that she's not really as sympathetic for the things that she has done and that her family has done, but that she did not want, her peers and her friends to see her in this light. And maybe there was a little bit of truth to what she was saying. I mean, I think we can all sort of imagine what it would be like to grow up the way that she has, and maybe she hasn't had much of a chance. But she's 35 years old, and so some responsibility does need to be taken as an adult for your actions. So, I also want to preface the fact, because I did this before y'all could see me, preface the fact that, you've seen with a lot of these other so-called mega ministers that a lot of these conversations that have been recorded have been done secretly. And the reason for that is, the reason I believe that is because it's so hard to believe that these kinds of conversations go on behind closed doors. And if you don't record it, then it's going to be their word against yours. And of course, they are master manipulators, and they are, denying and dismissing and devaluing everything that you're saying and doing. And it's really hard to kind of fight back at that, especially if there are other people in the room that are kind of, the sycophants, and take the part of the perpetrator. So I'm going to, because there is a lot to hear tonight. I'm going to move on now to a different clip. I'm kind of looking at the chat, but the next audio that I'm going to play is still from this same conversation with Carol. And in this clip, Ashton is talking about her suicide attempt. And after we play this, I actually have the anonymous staff member that has provided some information that kind of coincides with this. And I thought that I saw something here, and I just want to take a look at it. Somebody was saying that Jonathan 88, I feel so sorry for Ashton. I feel like she didn't get to be a child. She shouldn't have to feel like she can't be herself or make mistakes. She has become a product of her father. He behaves unseemly. Well, I don't necessarily disagree with that that take on things, except for, when do you take responsibility for your actions, and how can you rightfully reprimand people, attack people for their choices and the things that they do, when you're literally doing the exact same thing and worse behind closed doors, because you think either people are not going to find out about it, or if they do, you just refute, sweep it under the rug, get rid of the people that are trying to call you out. So I'm going to now play the suicide conversation from that same conversation with Carol. And again, right after that, I'm going to play another clip from the anonymous staff member. And this anonymous staff member, the voice is going to be distorted. So I just wanted to let you know that. So now I'm going to play this clip.
We interpret this and smooth this over, and how do we cover it up? Like with my suicide attempt, like my dad, even though he's proud of me for being brave, Like, he would rather I never shared that, because to him, that's a slight on him as a father and a pastor. Like, you let your daughter get to that point, so you failed. And those are the kinds of things that I struggle to navigate and negotiate. And I've just always, since I was a little kid, had to think about, what do I share? What do I not? What's too much? What's not enough?
On another eventful day in our meetings, and again, there's not a meeting without verbal beating. Like, I mean, maybe one sparsely here and there, but 2 a week, every Tuesday and Friday morning, 9 a.m. Everybody stinks, nobody's doing anything, nobody's working hard enough, we're children, everybody needs a pay cut. The usual, everybody stinks, there's a unicorn outside my window, and it's your fault. So, another gun story. So, supposedly the daughter tried to commit suicide. That's the story that we've been all told for years, right? And he was yelling and carrying on so bad one day. It was typical. That day, I think, might have been the day where he was yelling and he says, just go get a broom and do something productive. This is his executive staff team at the church. He's telling us just to be productive because we're so awful getting nothing done. And when I tell you, you couldn't find harder working people who are more dedicated, put up with more, produce more in the most awful of circumstances. And he said, we all need to just get up and go get a broom and sweep and do something productive. So he's yelling and hitting the table so hard that the gun that he has stored under the table, it falls on the floor and it falls right by Ashton's feet. And that was supposedly the gun that she had just used, almost used to commit suicide sometime before. So she starts crying, and at that point the meeting was adjourned for the second time. There are many, many, many times over the years where he gets so worked up where Megan will say, we need to take a break. We leave the room. We come back in 45 minutes, an hour or so, and continue on. And so we all left the room, and may or may not have circled back later that day. But yeah, that was the second gun story. He hit the desk so hard that it fell out of its holder onto the floor by Ashton's feet and freaked her out because she had just almost used it to commit suicide not too long before that.
So I played those audio clips back to back because I thought they were very, very relevant. And hopefully, as we move through this entire episode, you're going to kind of see how all of this plays in together. And Jim and Tammy, the PTL Chronicle, said Ashton expects compassion but gives none. And I agree with that. I have seen it firsthand, and it's absolutely disgusting the way that Rod and Ashton treat people, period. So, moving on to the next clip. And the reason I'm playing this is because I think that it's not only relevant to the discussion, but it's relevant from a couple of standpoints. First and foremost is that these big time ministries and these big time, mega ministers, they use NDAs to protect themselves. They use intimidation. They use harassment. They use even, the enchantments and trying to use repetitive speech to get almost brainwash you. That's my opinion, of course. But the next clip I'm going to play, I'm playing it for those reasons so that you can understand what these situations look like at this place. And I'm sure they are occurring at other mega ministries as well. But this same staff member that sent in the audio recording about what happened with the suicide gun is someone that was in the room during the meeting where that gun was shut off. And you guys heard me talk about that in my very first episode, the smoking gun. And it was a staff meeting. This person is giving a full account of what happened during that meeting. And I want you to pay attention to several things. The first one being there were at least 12 people in this meeting, and nobody reported the gun being shot. Nobody said anything about it. People were in pure shock. But you'll also hear that there was a lot of crying. This meeting had dragged on from morning until night. But towards, the end of this, you're going to hear some names that you are very familiar with. And the main one being Lisa. And in this clip, they are talking about Lisa Brunson. And I'm also bringing that up because this is someone, and you're going to hear, I know you guys have already heard me talk about, but this is someone that was actually in this room when this happened, okay? So you're going to hear from their mouth what exactly happened in this meeting. But now we not only see Lisa and Germaine back at World Harvest Church, but my understanding from my sources is that they have been offered full-time positions yet again, and basically name your price to take the job. And are we really, selling our souls for fame and fortune? And I know how badly these people were treated, and I know how many people they discouraged from working there. They discouraged from even being a part of this place. But now, because of forgiveness, and again, I believe in forgiveness. I think forgiveness is a great thing. But why would you put yourself back in the lion's den? I just can't believe it's just for money. So I'm going to now play this audio from the staff member that was actually in the meeting. And again, the voice is distorted to not reveal their identity.
It was January of 2019, possibly the last week in December of 2018, and we were doing a day of yearly planning for 2019. We began in the exec conference room that morning at 09 a.m., and we had gone all day until about 11 p.m., that's right 11 p.m., over 12 hours, and it had been your typical day of, at that time, raised voice, yelling. It had been your typical day of yelling. No one's doing anything. Nobody's working. Everyone's standing around counting ceiling tiles. No one's doing anything right. People crying. People plural. From top execs to pastors there on staff, in the exec conference room, about 12 plus people in the room. And so it was about 11 something at night, and he was sitting in his chair, and he had his gun out. At that time, he still may, but at that time, he kept the gun under his side of the exec desk, and he pulled it out, and he was fooling around with it, and he shot it. It went off. Jay was standing up at the whiteboard in the conference room. There's a TV in the center that we play things on, put things up on that screen, and there's a whiteboard on either side. Jay was standing up on the whiteboard to the left of the TV for looking at it, and he was writing numbers and stats and that kind of thing, plans we were coming up with. And when the gun was fired, the bullet hit the television right next to Jay Baldwin. If Jay would have been a foot over, it could have killed him. he would have been shot at minimum. It hits the TV, shattered the television that of course had to be taken down and replaced with a new TV. The bullet bounces off of that now broken TV and goes and lands in what was an empty chair that day of Lisa's. At that point Lisa was to quit within a couple weeks, and she was just at the top of it all and way over it. And there's no way that she could take another day of verbal beating, and the bullet bounces off the TV and landed in the chair where she would have been sitting but was absent that day. And she had done what she and others had often done and do when they just cannot physically or mentally take an hour to 3 a day of verbal and emotional beating. She played sick, and she stayed home that day, and it was a good thing that she did, because that bullet landed in her chair. So, fast recap: yearly planning meeting. He fires off a gun, it hits the television, almost hits Jay, breaks the TV, bullet lands in the chair where Lisa would have been sitting, and we all sat there. I mean, a number of people yelled and was like, "Oh my God." We sat there in amazement, shocked that that had just happened. A few wept, not the first time of the day, and we went maybe another hour after that, and then went home.
So, I see. Hi, Raphael. Hi, Lucky Licks. Hi, Jason. Hi, Kimberly. I see. Raphael said the Brunsons are like dogs going back to their vomit, and I agree. Unfortunately, I agree. I just, again, I just can't believe that it's just for money. I don't know who needs money that bad, and I'm actually someone that I interviewed that is going to be the interview that plays next week. She was also scared about her identity completely being revealed. So she used an alias, and she asked that, we either blank out the screen or make it blurry enough that you can't tell who she is. But um, she talks about her position there and the fact that they could offer her $100,000 a year or $1 million a year, and she would not go back because it isn't worth it. And so I wanted to, I wanted everyone to hear from someone that was in that room. I've talked to at least 4 people that were in that meeting when the gun was shot off, but I think that this captures what the feeling in that room was. But again, the fact there were 12 people in there. And so now we know of 2 occasions, and I knew when I worked there, you guys, that there were guns. I didn't know I didn't know they were there constantly, but I knew that at least on one occasion that there was a gun. And now we're finding out that maybe it's a little bit more frequent, or that the guns may be throughout the ministry. But you're also talking about this is a school, but why would no one report this? And I think that it's prudent to say this is a part of the intimidation factor. You have this man who, is charismatic on stage, but very abusive behind closed doors. He typically has armor bearers or some kind of security with him. He's got his guard dog that is trained, and he's carrying weapons. And so, who wouldn't be intimidated? But when you are in these rooms and nobody is speaking up and everybody's just kind of, yes, sir, oh, and then just come back the next day for more verbal beatings and, emotional abuse. This is what these are what these rooms feel like. And again, I thought that this was probably the closest perfect depiction of what that room was like that day. Um, I know. Oh, Jason said, I can't count the times he had his gun during a TV taping. I mean, for what reason? Like, nobody's trying to kill this guy. Maybe at one point in time, oh, here's my dog. I think he probably needs to go out, but, why do you need to carry a gun? I mean, I just don't get it. Other than the intimidation factor, nobody's trying to attack you or off you. So you have to be doing it just to intimidate other people and make people fearful. So I told you guys I have a lot there's a lot of audio, there's a lot of stuff going on here, but I have more audio again from the conversation that was secretly recorded from Carol. Again, Carol, I think I saw you in the chat. Thank you so much again for everything that you've done already and being a voice for the voiceless and giving us some insight to what things look like behind closed doors with Ashton specifically. So I'm going to let you know, I believe in this audio clip, there is at least a little bit of foul language. I know most of us are adults here, but I want to make sure that I say that because I actually, when I saw the interview, or not the interview, but the recordings with Joni Lamb and Jimmy Evans, and then Jonathan and Susie, and Joni's, cursing in this meeting, people were shocked by this, and I can assure you, at least in my experience, that when people are not on stage, the way that they speak, the verbiage that they use, the it's much different, a lot more spicy than what you're seeing on stage. So I am now going to play a clip, and I'm just going to set it up a little bit. But in this clip, again from 2020, Ashton is basically, telling Carol that at one point in time, she shouldn't have been in a position of authority, and that she was unkind, and that she's thinking about leaving ministry. And I know we're all sitting here like, why haven't you left yet? Why can't you just go and live your own life and stop pretending to be this minister, while you're not actually leading anyone to Jesus, you're actually leading them away from Jesus. So I'm now going to play this audio for you.
I'll just say, like, during that time in my life and when I first came to Valor and like when the Elijah stuff went down, I was in a very, very bad place. I was very unhappy. I was very angry. I was lashing out in every way. I feel like I was a terrible leader. I was a bitch. Like, I was too young and too green to have been put in those positions. Like, I had no business leading Remnant. I had no business, like, being over Megan. I had no business being Megan's boss in one sense in the executive office. Like, I wasn't ready for those positions. And I still don't know if I am. Like, that is something that I am very much struggling with right now, is whether or not I'm going to stay here. Like, I have, for the past year or so, like, I have been very, very, very much struggling with whether or not I'm to keep this career. Like, and a lot of it is because of things exactly like this, where I feel like it's nearly impossible for anybody to be my friend, because especially unless they just have absolutely nothing to do with the church whatsoever, but people within the church, it's like, my therapist is like, they're not your friends. I'm like, well, how can you say that? And she's like, they're not your friends. Like, you're their pastor or you're their boss, and that's what you are to them first, and you can't be their friend. I'm like, but they, like, we have to draw the line. And she's like, you can't expect people to do that. Like, you just can't expect people to know how and when to draw those lines. And I think that that was my expectation, was, okay, know when I have my remnant hat on and respect me and respond to me as a leader, but then know when I've taken that hat off and I'm just Ashton. And it's like, that is a lot to expect of people, especially when, you know, you're younger. And I
Hey, Brandon Bartels. I see some people are commenting, and I see Raphael. You know, you said that she needs to step down, and that um, that you low key feel bad for her. And I think that anybody with a heart and some compassion, that it's not hard to hear some of this audio and feel heartbroken. But again, like I mentioned, you know, this is a family business, and we're going to show later on, you know, in the podcast, how these so-called mega ministers are either suffering from the same personality disorders, or they are possessed by the same spirits, because the way that they behave, they will sacrifice their own children and their grandchildren for fame, for fortune, and their empire. And, you know, you're surprised that they just treat Joe Schmo any kind of way. They do it to their own families. And if you are truly unhappy, and we can clearly see that Ashton is not happy, okay? And she's still not. You know, this was 4 years ago. She's still not happy. She has, you know, numerous affairs. She participates in drug use. She participates in alcohol use. She, you know, she lies and cheats, steals, anything that you can imagine, but downright just treats people horribly. And she doesn't have the charisma that her father has, but he's no better. And yes, has she become a product of her environment? Absolutely she has. But again, at what point do you say, I can't live my life like this anymore. I cannot be pretending to be, you know, this holy pastor that is getting up in this pulpit and preaching, knowing what she is doing behind closed doors. And at some point, you know, that can't really be a defense anymore, especially because I know how she treats people, and I know how she treats people since this time. So if you truly are repentant of your behavior, then you turn away from the behavior. And I am also going to say a few other things before we kind of move on. I believe that, you know, Stockholm syndrome is a real thing, and there's something that's called rumination, and it's an invisible trauma bond. But think Stockholm syndrome, and Stockholm syndrome is, you know, where you do have this bond with your perpetrator, and there, even though you may not like how they treat you, there is some bond with them where you still try to protect them and still want to have some kind of relationship with them. Now, I can't imagine, you know, it being any harder than it being with your own family. And I try not to always go back to just me and my experiences, but I want to say, you know, I I was a product of two narcissistic parents, and was very much a product of my environment. And I had to decide that I didn't want to be like that anymore. And it was years and years and years of therapy and deprogramming and reprogramming. And I still, you know, have to check myself at times. But my goal was to be the opposite. And so I know it can be done. And I wish that she would make those steps to kind of move into that direction. But I can also understand, you don't want to let your family down. You don't really know what would happen to you if you decide to disconnect. And then you are looking now, at what's happened at these other ministries, where these other ministries will, they'll crucify their own children and grandchildren to keep their reputation and their empire up, and the money to continue to keep coming in. But that's the other thing too. We continue to hear that these pastors and these mega ministries, they know dirt on all of each other, and they just continue to operate as if, oh, it's no big deal. But it's like, just like Carol said, they make sure that everybody's hands get dirty, so that if you want to say something or do something, then they have some dirt on you. But when is enough enough? How long do you want to keep up this charade? How long do why are you not having a conversation? We need to back out of ministry. We need to get ourselves right. But then where does the money come from? And I think that that's what it keeps going back to. But I also want to say that as a parent, I would give up my own life for my kids. And if I knew that my kids were hurting as bad as it sounds like Ashton is, it I would move hell and high water to make sure that my kids got the help that they needed, so that they could be healthy and thriving adults, or kids, really, for that matter. But it's really sad to me that it seems like Ashton realized a long time ago that their product, their empire was more important than anything else. And so it's all about protecting the brand, and it doesn't matter what's going on with them. And there's so much there that we could discuss, but Marianne said this sounds so mafia. It is, it's family first. You keep your mouth shut. You never talk about the secrets of the family, and anything that happens behind closed doors, that's where it stays. And it's really sad, because religion is their business and God is their product. And I have to wonder if their goal it has always been to lead people away from God instead of to God. It's it's just really a shame. So I'm kind of taking a look at the comments. Hey, Dr. Jim, how are you? So I wasn't gonna leave old Rodney Lee out of the mix here tonight. So I have some audio. And again, this is going to really play into, once we start getting in a little bit deeper here to some of these comparisons of the intimidation, the harassment, the belittling, the berating. We know all of that is true. But this is kind of a compilation of at least 4 different instances, if not more, of Rod and how he interacts with his staff. So just 1 second, and we're going to play this.
Hey, try to get through it again.
Yes, sir. Apologies for not having that scheduled.
I'm tired of apologies.
Jackie. Yes, sir.
I'm pukey sick of apologies. I just need somebody to do the work. Can anybody give me a list of 18? Before I lose my mind. Why would we have an agenda? Mike, do you have an answer? Because right now you're all just doing what you do, sitting there staring at me. I'm asking a sincere question. Have you ever had a real job? Never should have gotten in front of me. I got JC, I got you, and I got you. And that's what you dumped in my lap. Go on. So we don't have people at the table. What tables are we using? That was the answer. Who are the people at the tables? We don't have them. Do you have them?
No, sir.
Right. So you shuffle through the mess and come and dump the mess on my lap. For me to fix. Either of you want to come do my work today?
We'll fix it.
Right.
We should have never shown up. We knew it was not
Right.
fair when we spoke about it, and we should have just said, we're not in a position to show you today.
Right.
But we'll fix it
Right.
someday.
And you should have put that right back in his face and told him exactly what I'm telling you.
Yes, sir.
Why would you put this in front of me? JC, you can't see past your mask? What's the deal? Don't do this again. This is not acceptable. I'm not taking this to pastor. I mean, it's really time to get a lot of training wheels off here. Same crap over and over and over and over.
So I'm looking at the chat now, but there's probably going to be an entire episode just on this factor alone. But I want to talk about just very briefly, because I see, it's in the chat about, has Rod ever had a real job, and he's a tyrant. And here's the thing, you guys. Almost everyone that works there works for tens of thousands of dollars less than what they're worth, okay? And for the amount of work that they do. And the way that it's sold is, we're a ministry, so we can't pay as much as corporate America, but you're doing your work unto the Lord. And so if God's called you here, you'll be okay with this very meager paycheck. Meanwhile, Rod's paying himself about $1 million a year. Joni is making a 6-figure salary, and she never works, which isn't against the law, but can we divvy up some of that money for the staff members? Ashton's making a 6-figure salary. I know Austin works there now. But not while I work there. And then some of the very top executives are making a 6-figure salary. But when I tell you that the amount of work that you are expected to do for the peanuts that you make, it is absolutely disgusting, while they're, driving their Escalades and have their $1 million homes and have their jets and have their, 5-star luxury vacations, the same stuff that you're hearing about at these other ministries. It is just absolutely disgusting. And then they're begging for money constantly. As Pastor Ray would say, for me, mom, pawpaw. I call mine, mama and papa, a little bit different, but these people are sending in money from their Social Security checks. They barely have any money to give. And these people are living high on the hog, while they're also have staff of hundreds of people that they are, these people could go to McDonald's and make more money. And that is the absolute God honest truth. And the other part of this, and again, I don't want to spend too much time, but this could be a whole episode in its own right. Oh, Mockingbird 899, what's Lisa Brunson make? Well, I don't know, but the word on the street, Mockingbird, is that her and Germaine have been offered their positions back, and basically at name their price. I would assume it's six figures, but again, I think that if you heard even just the audio we just played about that meeting, why would you go back? Can't be for money. Cannot be for money. So now that I kind of got off my little soapbox about the job, I think I was probably going to say one more thing about that. But that's what I was going to say. If your only training is there, if that literally has been your only job is there, you would struggle out at a regular job, not for any other reason, but you are shocked at how good you're treated other places, and that you can actually just work 40 or 50 hours a week and make a wage that you can live on, and that the expectations are attainable. The expectations are the same for everyone. Nobody is expecting more out of you than they expect from themselves. And again, I don't think, I think there's some leeway there, but when I tell you the working conditions at World Harvest are the worst that I have ever seen in my career, and I've been in HR and management for 20 years, and I've been doing it since I was born. But it's really, it's mind blowing that people think that, working 90 or 100 hours a week is normal, and they're only getting paid for 40, and they're getting nickeled and dimed every chance that the ministry gets. And I also want to bring up one thing before I go to the clip of Pastor Ray, is that back in the days, in I think 90s and 2000s, when they actually had the food pantry that was connected to World Harvest Church, I have several reports from people that the main people that were going to those food pantries were who? Drum roll, please. The staff. They literally were making so little money that they had to go to the food pantry where they worked so that they could feed their families. And there's no shame in these people's game, okay? How can you run a ministry and treat people like that and then go live this lavish lifestyle? I find that absolutely disgusting. But the fact that they exploit people, they exploit God, they use God and miracles and blessings to um, invoke emotions out of people, and this great music to invoke these emotions out of people, so they keep sending their money. And that's how you shut down these ministries, especially if they're not going to get investigated. I don't know what needs to happen. I know it's going to happen in God's timing, so I'm not going to get too frustrated about it. But you shut down these ministries, you stop going and you stop giving. And that's how that happens. And so I want to play now a clip from Pastor Ray did an episode just a few nights ago, and he's talking about witchcraft. And I'm going to start kind of tying all of this in, because I think that one thing that I haven't really seen is comparing all of these corrupt ministries to one another. And again, people think that they're going to get treated great and treated fairly. They don't even treat their own families that way if they start speaking up, or if they will not comply with crimes that these leaders want them to go along with. So I'm going to play this clip from Pastor Ray, and then we'll continue the discussion.
Exodus 22:18, as I said earlier, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. You don't allow it. You don't allow it. 1 Chronicles 10:13, while Saul died. So Saul died for his transgression which he committed against the Lord, even against the word of the Lord which he kept not, and also for asking counsel of one that had a familiar spirit to inquire of it. Manipulation is a type of witchcraft. People don't understand that when you're being manipulated in ministry, that is a satanic spirit. If you need me to do something, don't guilt trip me. That's manipulation. Don't guilt trip me. No, don't do that. Once you ask, we need people who can help us out with volunteering this weekend. Okay, some people come up. All right, Saints, we really need you. We know that some of you might be free and we don't ask much. Please help. Okay, that's all right. Now we start getting into, you know what I've done for you. We help y'all pay y'all bills, and we gave y'all money, and we did this and we did that. Okay, now we in a spirit of manipulation. If you gonna help somebody, do it from your heart. If you're gonna help people, help them. But if you're gonna throw it up in their face later, you're a witch. You're an old witch. You're an old warlock. That's what you are. See, we got to start calling this stuff as it is. So abuse will stop happening to y'all in church. Spiritual abuse. Like Rod Parsley. That's why I thank God for Mega Maniacs in Ohio for freedom, because they calling out Rod Parsley and his nasty daughter up there at World Harvest, talking about all you leaders, you not supporting the vision, and you'll have a reprobate mind and this, that, and other. That ain't how you get up before God's people, especially not the pastor daughter. Don't let no pastor's kids talk crazy to you. Don't let no pastor's kids talk crazy to you. We made life good for you, Rod Parsley daughter, whatever your name is, forgot your name. Meemaw and Paw sent their money to World Harvest for your daddy to get up on stage lying to people, and with that nasty college that's falling apart. People keep coming out and testifying about how they got messed over in college, allegedly. This is the stuff that happened to World Harvest in his so-called college. And then the daughter get on stage and fuss everybody out. You leaders this and you leaders that and the other. This is all witchcraft. It's a spirit of manipulation. And y'all need to catch this kind of stuff so that you can call out and say, no, don't try to manipulate me. Don't try to guilt trip me into anything. Confessing your faults can be manipulation. Sometimes people want to know what you did so they can help you. People want to know what you did so that they can use it later. It happened in the Catholic Church. People go in and make confessions, and then years later, they would say, hey, you remember what you told me about your wife? You might want to give a certain amount of money to the papacy. Oh, you remember what you told me you did to your daughter? There's a certain amount of money I'm going to need every month from you for this diocese. There are people you thinking they're there to help you. This is all manipulation, witchcraft in the church. There are people you think are there to help you, and you go pour out all your heart and all your spirit to them because they got the big hat and they call them first lady. Because she sit in the front seat and they call that first lady. So you think you can talk to that thing and don't know that thing is a gossiper. That thing is going to spread your information all around the church or use your information.
So again, big shout out to Pastor Ray. He, if any of you are not following Pastor Ray or subscribe to his channel, it's called The Unction. I encourage you to go over and do that. And the same for Ohio for Freedom and Truth Be Told with Mary Ann. There's a lot of great podcasts, and but Pastor Ray has kind of become one of my favorites because I feel like he knows the word of God, but he knows how to explain it and has his own take on it that is very real. And he's not mincing words. And he'll say, and he has said, I come from the street, so you can't, you can't come at me and try to persuade me like you do these other people, because I know you're trying to run game on me. I know what game looks like. And people just don't believe that sort of thing happens in ministries. And obviously, we're here to tell you that this might be one of the biggest avenues that it is happening in. What the tax write-offs that you get, you don't have to report your income on your 990s. You don't have to have any transparency with your congregation or the people that are giving you money. You and you can just just extort money from people however you decide to, and people just eat this stuff up because they like your preaching style, and they like the worship music, and people are like turning off their brains when they're sitting in front of these people, and it's kind of mind-boggling to me, but I also understand it because I didn't go to church there, but I worked there, and I found myself kind of drinking the Kool-Aid at times too. And I luckily kind of snapped out of it. But it took really seeing how badly people were being treated before my eyes and ears were completely open. And I find myself even angry at myself at times, or I don't want to say angry, but maybe disappointed that I wasn't more outraged at certain things that were happening. Because now that I'm out of it, I'm like, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I say this? But obviously, hindsight's 2020, and when you're in the midst of those things, it's really hard to see the forest for the trees. So now we're going to kind of start going into the comparisons, and you saw on the title of the podcast, because there are so many similarities with these pastors and these mega ministries that it's kind of mind-blowing to me. And my question, that I'm posing is, are these so-called ministers, are they suffering from the same personality disorders, or are they are they familiar spirits, and are they possessed by the same spirits? And we're going to specifically talk about Jezebel, but I know that Baal and some other have been mentioned, and so I'm going to first and foremost, where I want to say also, I am not a psychologist, but I have a good friend who is a behavioral psychologist, and she basically told me to pull up the DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and take a look at it. And specifically, the personality disorders that fall under cluster B. So you can see this on the screen, but I'm just going to kind of read it here. Antisocial personality disorder. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that they're antisocial with people, but it means that they have these attributes. So they have a disregard for others, disregard for social irresponsibility, deceitfulness, and manipulation for personal gain. Borderline personality disorder, which is under the cluster B, unstable relationships, inner emptiness, and emotional dysregulation. Histrionic, excessive emotionality, and attention seeking. Narcissistic personality disorder, which I think most people are the most familiar with. A lack of empathy. Who does that sound like? Self-grandiosity, again, and a need for admiration. And then it goes into people with cluster B personality disorders are often described as dramatic, emotional, or erratic. But in speaking with my friend, they can also be very charismatic. And I think, I don't believe that, Ashton has the same charisma as her father, but Rod is definitely very charismatic. And so you can see some of the signs of the cluster B personality disorders. And I would say that we could, check a lot of those boxes for some of these mega ministers. But then I also found, which I had heard of megalomaniacs, not to be confused with megamaniacs, but they have it's someone who has an unhealthy desire for power and control, or who believes they are more significant and powerful than they actually are. And the symptoms of delusions of grandeur, and more important and powerful than they are, inflated self-esteem, unwillingness to be humble. And when I looked at these, I'm thinking, who these all check the several boxes for not only Rod and Ashton, but for a lot of these mega ministers. And so now, Lucky Licks, Christian cluster B personalities filled with the Holy Spirit. Yeah, right. People think these familiar spirits will train you in the knowledge of the word. That is deception. I agree with that 100%. So now, moving on to, we've talked about these personality disorders. Let's now look at some of the key characteristics of Jezebel. So Jezebel was obviously someone in the Bible. And I know people talk about, well, where is Jezebel's spirit in the Bible? It's not Jezebel's spirit. It's Jezebel is a person. So the first appearance of Jezebel is in 1 Kings. The wicked King Ahab married her in order to assist in leading Israel into Baal worship. She was cunning and spiritually controlling. We see this in play in 1 Kings 18 when she orders the death of all the prophets of the Lord. She wanted to silence their voices and replace them with altars to Baal. Her wickedness is also on display in 1 Kings 21 in the death of Naboth. And sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Ahab wanted to buy his land or his vineyard, and he refused to sell it. And so Jezebel basically schemed and plotted to have him killed. Okay. And so looking at some of the characteristics of someone that would be said to have a Jezebel spirit, using spiritual influence to manipulate or control others, sexual immorality, idolatrous, leading others away from authentic faith in Christ, inciting fear and discouragement in others. And we see this in Elijah in 1 Kings, which I read a little bit from there already. False teaching. And when someone acts as Jezebel did, exemplifying these characteristics, we might say that they have a Jezebel spirit. Those who mirror spiritual gifts but are energized by unchrist-like aims will always be deadly to individuals and communities. So I'm going to come back to me really quick here. So I'm not just showing you things on the screen, but I have I pulled some of the most notable mega ministers up on some slides so we can compare and contrast some of the things that have been going on with them, some very recent, some a couple years ago. But I think that it's noteworthy that we see a lot of these characteristics kind of mimic personality disorders and being, possessed by this spirit. So the first mega minister that we're going to look at, or a clip of something that's happened with them or did happen with them, is the Crouches. So Jan Crouch. So in the first newspaper clipping here in, I believe it says June 6, 2017, granddaughter of televangelist Jan Crouch, who alleged rape, was awarded $2 million. Now you can pull this up and kind of read it a little bit more, but this granddaughter said that she was raped by someone at TBN. So the Crouches were over TBN, and of course was not believed by her grandparents. They tried to discourage her from reporting it, and she went ahead and moved forward and won a $2 million lawsuit against them. But then you look, they have another granddaughter, Brittany. She is also the granddaughter of the Crouches, but it says Paul Crouch Sr. He was the founder of TBN. That Paul, I believe it was Michael or okay, they fired a gun. So I'm trying to read this, y'all. I'm can't read it as well as I'd like to, but top bosses in the organization threatened her life with a gun and fired her and her husband Michael after she refused to illegally funnel some $100 million of charitable assets to their personal accounts. And it's just wild as I continue to go through these. So now Robert Morris, this is more recent, November 2nd, 2024. He was a part of Gateway. And if you've heard anything with the Joni Lamb situation with Susie and Jonathan, that before all of these accusations and allegations came out about Robert Morris molesting Cindy Clemenshire starting at the age of 12, that Robert Morris was their pastor, and they had gone to him for advice because they did not believe that the marriage with Joni and whatever the guy's name is, I should have written it down, but I don't. So this marriage, that they were against it, and they didn't believe that it was biblical. And when Susie and Jonathan had that conversation with Joni, that Robert Morris agreed that biblically that Susie and Jonathan were correct, that she said, well, it's okay. Some girl in Oklahoma is getting ready to out them. And so they know that this guy is being accused of molesting a 12-year-old, and they're just going to keep him on the network, keep the ratings coming in, keep the money funneling in. And there apparently were elders now at Gateway Church that are being removed that knew about abuse allegations, and they did nothing. Mike Bickle, accused of abusing a 14-year-old. So he was a part of the International House of Prayer, I believe, in Kansas City, and another so-called pastor that is engaging in this kind of behavior. Well, no limitations with God. I wish Robin would do a broadcast about what happened to the Deegans. Brother, if I knew, I would definitely do it. I have not been able to get the information that I would like to have on that, unfortunately. So now let's take a look. This is on Benny Hinn and Paula White, sued for inappropriate relationship. And I actually didn't even know about this one. I was going to do two separate ones on Benny Hinn and Paula White, but I was able to find this one. So now we go to the Lambs. And this is probably the most notable at this point in time, is that that they are covering up their granddaughter's sex abuse by another family member. And again, it's alleged at this point, okay, but it appears very much to be the situation. And again, they will sacrifice their own family if they do not get in line. So why do people why are people shocked that they just treat anybody this exact same way? And not only were they refuting these claims that were being brought about their granddaughter, but then they fire the son. Well, they demote him first from vice president to, cafe manager, and cut his pay, and then end up firing them. And, of course, they're saying it was for performance, but I haven't seen anything that would indicate that's the case. And but it appears it was because they would not sign a non-disclosure agreement and bow down to Joni Lamb, since of course she is the voice of God. And now let's not forget the Parsleys. So this is an article, you guys, that Pete from the Trinity Foundation sent to me actually several months ago. And for whatever reason, I saw the other um, attachments, but I did not see this one. But I wanted to just touch on a couple of things, and I have discussed them before, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but I will try to post this full article because it's 11 pages long, and it was posted in 1999. But it talks about Naomi Endicott, who was a family member. She was sexually harassed by James Parsley, also known as Clyde, and she ended up secretly recording, and she sued them, and she did end up winning the lawsuit against them. But he was sexually harassing Naomi. He was touching her. He was making very lewd comments to her, and she had finally had enough because she couldn't speak up because it's all in the family, just like it says, and this mafia mentality. And so she went and did what any forward thinking person would do: secretly record, which again is what you have to do to make sure that people believe you because it's so outrageous. But then Clyde keeps his job at World Harvest Church and does not get terminated. And who knows how many people he harassed after that. But that was not the only lawsuit that was going on at the time. The In a civil suit filed in Fairfield County Common Pleas Court, a former church member named Louis Bungard claims that in September 1991, Rod Parsley choked him and James Parsley punched him in a dispute over some painting work Bungard had done at the Parsley's home. Criminal assault charges were dropped against Rod Parsley, and his father they were dropped against Rod, and his father pleaded no contest to an assault charge, was found guilty of disorderly conduct. So, and of course, the Parsleys would not discuss that with the media. But I thought that it was important to show very many ministers and these pastors that seem to be operating the same way. They are being accused of very, very similar crimes, and they have deep pockets. And at some of these organizations like World Harvest, they claim to have a board. I was there for almost 4 years. I can't tell you one board member. I don't know their names. I don't. I wouldn't even tell you where to start of a board. And so, if a board does in fact exist, okay. These are people that are going to go along with whatever Rod Parsley says for whatever reason. So now, lastly, before we will be coming to an end here pretty soon, is I want to just touch on one little thing before I go into the modern day child sacrifices. So when I posted the video or audio of Ashton yesterday, someone had commented and said, it sounds like Saul when he was trying to, protect his kingdom. And I thought that it was super prudent to just discuss this fairly quickly. Saul's acts of disobedience caused the Lord to take away his kingship. Samuel told him that because of his foolish choices, Saul would be replaced on the throne. His final days were filled with the obsessive hunt for David, as well as other manic and destructive behavior. And the 4 lessons that we should take from the rise and fall of Saul is God judges us by our hearts, not by our outward appearances, not what we appear to be, but who we are. He knows, okay? So you can think that you're fooling the world, you're fooling all of these people in front of you, but at the end of the day, God knows. And is there any amount of money to spend eternity in hell? I don't think so. The second thing, God wants us to have confidence in Him, not pride in ourselves. We need to humble ourselves. And again, that's all of us, but I think that the people at the top that are actually supposedly, preaching from the pulpits are the ones that need to listen to this more. God calls us to follow His will, not our own. And the fourth one is God calls us to follow His commands faithfully, not selectively. So it can't be do as I say, not as I do. The rules apply to you, but the rules don't apply to me. But that's the thing, is that Rod is aware of these issues that have been going on with Ashton for Lord knows how long, and he continues to put her on a pedestal. He continues her to go in that pulpit. He continues to allow her to be this student pastor and whatever she is doing at the college. And it's absolutely disgusting. They are leading people away from God, not towards God. And that brings me to these modern day child sacrifices. And I'm going to pull this up now. So this is I don't know why my video isn't working, you guys. You guess you're just going to see a picture of me looking kind of side-eyed at the scripture. But this is a scripture from Ezekiel 16:20 through 21. And I'm going to just kind of read some things that I have written down here. Is it's talking about the actual child sacrifices from in the biblical days. In an excellent account of this occurs in Ezekiel 16, where God, through the prophet, describes how He rescued a lost, despised, and hopeless people, Israel, giving them life and identity as His own children. Using the parable of an abandoned newborn, God illustrates how He rescued and raised the rejected infant to maturity, only to have the child devote his heart to a foreign god. In their idolatry, God's people turned even to the literal sacrifice of their children. And then here, here's the actual verse from Ezekiel 16:20 through 21. Moreover, you took your sons and daughters whom you had born to me and sacrificed them to idols to be devoured. Were you harlotrous, so small a matter? You slaughtered my children and offered them up to idols by causing them to pass through the fire. And so I'm going on to say that that when Christians read of such abominations in scriptures, that we often have a difficulty relating and fail to see its application. After all, we no longer witness children placed in the sacrificial fire to honor Moloch or Ashtoreth. But I would suggest that idolatry is alive and well, and children are indeed offered on the altar of countless high places. The worship of self is primary and has fragmented the biblical home into pockets of individual gratification, personal goals, rights, and entitlements. Biblical order is often abandoned because God's scripture interrupts one's selfish ambition, calling instead for the glory and magnification of God above all else. Believers who are suffering the spiritual and physical consequences of disobedience, yet they fail to understand their misplaced focus. And I'm sorry that was so long, you guys, but I just think that it's so important that we understand what is going on here. So just because we're not throwing our kids on into the sacrificial fire, or not, slaughtering them to offer them up to the gods, that children are still being sacrificed, and we have to do something. We have to open our eyes and open our ears to what is happening here, because this is the modern day children sacrifice. And what does the enemy do? He has come to kill, steal, and destroy. What better way to do that than to get to our children and to get these heretics in and people that are actually just suffering from apostasy into the pulpits. And I can't help but wonder, is this, has this been the goal all along, that that these pastors are actually leading people away from God instead of leading him to God? And if people don't open their eyes and ears, I fear the worst for them, because people are not believing that this stuff is really happening, or that it can happen in churches, which a lot of these are more like cults than churches. So I'm taking a quick look at the chat, and I actually am almost done here. So I just wanted to finish with a couple of scriptures, and this is coming from Matthew 20:25 through 28. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as ransom for many." And this, to me is saying, we know that the Bible also talks about the first will be last and the last will be first. But when did we get away from servanthood? When did these pastors become too good to serve the people? They employ people to serve them and pay them peanuts to do so, and then treat them badly in the process, and abuse them so badly that they don't even have the confidence that they can leave, because these people have enchanted them, put them under a spell, brainwash them. They're drinking the Kool-Aid, and they believe if they leave that they're out of God's will, and they need to be covered by, these corrupt ministries and corrupt cults. And I am just sick and tired of it. And I would like nothing more for them to either repent and remove themselves until they can do what they need to do to actually be what God intended for pastors and preachers to be, or just shut it down. Get out of there. Stop doing this stuff to people. And but it doesn't seem like it's stopping. But the good news is that God's in control. He is exposing the witchcraft in these churches. And I again challenge anybody that's watching this, if you're sick and tired of it too, stop going. Stop sending money. You have to hit them where it hurts. And just not going isn't going to stop this nonsense. You have to stop funding it. Defund these mega ministries that abuse and exploit people and do nothing but reap curses on people and keep them bound under their thumb. So you guys, is the end of this live broadcast that started a little bit late, because I thought that I was talking to y'all, and I wasn't. I was talking to myself. So I again want to say I love and appreciate all of you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting Megamaniacs and the other podcasts. And just please continue to keep all of us in prayer, as we do for you as well. And please tune in to next week for a new interview. I'm not sure if it's going to be on Tuesday or Wednesday, because again, my son has a basketball game on Tuesday night, but I'm going to try to work it out. So thank you guys again for tuning in. And I hope this was helpful. And please like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see